The following is an amazing story about a boy who described a previous life. When Gideon H. from Hungary was around 4 to 5 years old, he started to draw pictures of people with dark brown skin. When his mother Elizabeth pointed out to her son that he was making the complexions of his figures too dark, he ignored her and continued to colour them brown. His mother did not understand why he insisted on drawing his characters with brown skin, because they did not have any books where he would have seen dark-skinned people or anywhere they lived. He had not even seen any dark-skinned people on the movie screen, and the family did not know any dark-skinned people. All in all, he had not learned about Africa or any such place or customs through normal means. So where had he learned about or seen dark-skinned people? Then his mother noticed other unusual behaviour where during an outing at the family's summer home near a lake in Hungary, Gideon was asked to join the family members who were swimming in the lake, but he refused. When they attempted to get him to join in, Gideon would scream and struggle to get free to avoid going into the water. His mother could not understand why a son had such a fear and why he resisted going into the water in the lake. It was not that he feared water, because he did not respond in the same way and was quite happy to jump into the local swimming pool. For some unknown reason, he feared going into the lake. Things became more interesting and the puzzle started to come together when Gideon was about 6 or 7 years old. He suddenly told his mother that he believed he had a previous life, and that he remembered living in a different country with different people. He also said that he'd had a wife and children, saying, "My wife and children and other people there are not like people here. They're all black and completely half naked." His mother asked him where he'd lived in the past life, and he responded by drawing a picture of a hut with a cone-shaped roof topped with a vent for smoke. In front of the hut was a naked woman. Close to the hut was a river with rippling waves. Gideon said that the woman in the drawing was his wife. Elizabeth asked him why he drew his wife naked, and he just looked at her as if she was crazy. He said, "Because that is the way they were." Gideon continued to explain why he believed he had a previous life, saying how it is that every morning when I wake up and my eyes are not yet open, I immediately have the feeling that I must jump out of bed and go hunting in order to find food for my wife and children. It is only when I open my eyes and look around the room that I remember that I am a small boy. He then continued to describe his lifetime and drew pictures to support his narrative. We lived in little huts like these, which we built ourselves. Also, each of us made a boat for himself by hollowing out and carving the trunk of a tree. There was a large river, but no one could go into it as we can in the lake here. A kind of monster lived in the water. I don't remember what kind it was, but it bit people's legs off, and that's why last year I yelled so when you wanted me to go into the water of the lake. I was afraid that there was something in the water that could bite my legs, and even now I get that feeling when I go in the water, even though I know there is nothing dangerous living in the water here. The late Professor Ian Stevenson later showed interest in Gideon's case, and reasoned that the monster in the river was probably a crocodile, and that a past life fear of being bit by this reptile was responsible for Gideon's phobia of swimming in the lake near the family's summer house. Gideon continued to tell his story to his mother and said to her, "Remember, Mama, when we bought a boat for the family and I wanted to row it, you told me that I first had to learn how to row. But I knew that I could row because I could make my tree boat move along the water just as if it were part of me. I could even sit in my boat and flip over to the one side, go under the water and come up on the other side, still in the boat." And she said, "All right, try to row. You will find that you can't do it." Then you're all surprised when I took an oar because my arms are too short to handle both oars, and I showed that I could row and even manoeuvre the boat between other boats and between people. With my tree boat where I lived, I could do everything. You should have seen me, but the trees were not like the ones here." And then pointed to a tree that he had drawn, which looked like a palm tree, indicating that this was the type of tree his past life boat was carved from. Gideon also drew a picture of himself using a bow and arrow to hunt a bird that was in one of the palm trees. He also drew a curved object that he used for hunting. Gideon explained that when he threw the curved weapon, it would return back on its own. Though he didn't know the word, was Gideon describing a boomerang? It is interesting to note that although traditionally thought of as an Australian, boomerangs have also been found in ancient Europe, Egypt and North America. When Gideon was 13 years old, there was an incident where they found that it had an unusual ability for climbing trees. On that occasion, a neighbour had run to the house screaming that Gideon had climbed to the top of a poplar tree that was around 25 metres or 80 feet high. Elizabeth ran out and looked up into the tree, but initially could not see Gideon due to the branches and leaves of the tree, but she could hear him. She demanded that he come down. Reluctantly, Gideon climbed down slowly, but very skillfully. She asked him why he did something so dangerous, and he replied that he had made a nest at the top of the tree and could eat cooked corn up there, which tasted much better than on the ground. He also said that it had a wonderful view from the top of the tree. She said that it was too dangerous for him to climb so high and demanded that he build his nest on the ground. Gideon became angry and yelled at her, saying, "I would like to know who looked out for me when I was in the jungle and climbed trees even higher than this one to watch for animals. Where were you then?" This was not just a memory of a past life, but appeared to be an actual flashback. Another description Gideon gave was when he said, "I was out hunting and came upon a tiger. I threw my spear at him, but did not kill him. The tiger jumped on me with the spear still in him. I don't remember what happened next." Could this be Gideon talking about the last moments of his previous life? Another confusing description was that he was describing a tiger, but there are no tigers in Africa. When Gideon was 15 years old, he asked his mother if she could buy him a drum. So she took him to a local music store where he selected the largest drum in the shop. After returning home, Gideon amazed his mother by playing the drum with amazing skill. He was able to play complicated rhythms, and as he played, he appeared to be in a hypnotic state, and even cried as he drummed. After playing what sounded like an unusual rhythm, he said to his mother, "Do you see, Mama? This is a way we could send signals and messages to each other over great distances." How did he know that? Elizabeth had no idea of how her son had learned to play the drum in such a sophisticated way. Now totally curious, she asked him where he had lived in his previous life, and he said that it was in the jungle or tropics. When she suggested to him that he should read about Africa, he said, "What is the point? I know better how things were there, and don't need to know what white men think about them. When I do read about what life was like in Africa, I weep, even though I try not to do so." At a much later date, when Gideon was an adult, they both went to see a movie about dark-skinned natives, presumably in Africa, and she noticed him crying, and at one stage during the movie, he started to sob uncontrollably. Unlike many children who usually forget about their past life as they get older, this was not the case with Gideon. Even as an adult, he indicated that he felt that past life incarnation was indeed in Africa, and he had a strong affinity for Africa, even though he'd never been there in his life. Because of any lack of detail from Gideon, or the difficult task of searching for accurate historic records, it is impossible to identify his past incarnation. Professor Stevenson was unable to determine with any certainty what region it lived in, though Africa appears to be the likely country, as Gideon had felt a connection to the continent. Gideon had also remembered that his people had used drumming for communications. His description and drawing of a hut with a conical roof and a peculiar vent for the smoke was a type of structure that he would never have seen in his own country, Hungary. However, the round huts he described are typical of the ones in Africa. His claim that he was attacked and probably killed by a tiger put him to a life in India, although he may have been describing another large cat species. Stevenson concluded that neither his sketches as a young child nor his unusual behaviour could be explained by genes or the influence of his environment, alone or together.